Well, lately you can see how Bitcoin is just doing whatever it is that Japanese M2 is doing. And hopefully you understand now that has to do with the dollar yen exchange rate. But regardless of that, Bitcoin was following Japanese M2 right up until this week, actually, this Monday, when it had this rally that supposedly had to do with the softer inflation print. I actually started writing the issue talking about inflation and PPI and whatever. I was like, you know what, this doesn't matter. This is not what's happening. So I ended up deleting the issue and rewriting with a different topic. But I do want to bring this up. I mentioned on the issue, and I did not want to elaborate on this because I said that liquidity, Japanese M2, looks odd. I initially said funky, then I said odd. What do I mean by odd? Well, I mean this. Guys, this rally, this July rally being highlighted by Japanese M2 is literally one day. It goes from July 22nd, I think, Japanese liquidity is down here and like I don't know what level this is. It doesn't really matter. And then it surges all the way up here the very next day. And if you want to pinpoint the exact end of this rally, it actually is on July 30th, but sorry, 29th. So the rally begins on the 22nd and it ends on the 29th. And guys, Bitcoin's just not going to do that. Bitcoin's not going to be trading at, let's assume that we can use this red line to predict actual prices. Bitcoin's not going to be trading for 59K and then the next day is going to go to 75K. It's not going to do that. That's why I said liquidity looks weird. And when liquidity looks weird like that, what I have noticed is that Bitcoin kind of starts to advance ahead of schedule. We saw it here actually. So you see this rally here, this rally. Let's just end the rally in April. So we start the rally on March 29th, and let's say just this one leg up on that ends on April 27th, April 22nd. Let's use the 22nd, the 21st, which is when liquidity said the rally would stop. Notice that Bitcoin actually begins to rally ahead of it. It begins to rally. So liquidity, Japanese M2, starts to rally on April 7th. Bitcoin actually started to rally on on March 29th. So a little ahead of that. It starts to move about a week ahead of what liquidity suggested. Yeah, I know this sounds a little weird. I don't know why it does this, but it does do this. Broadly speaking, what we could say is that Bitcoin's going to follow liquidity, and liquidity during this time period, April, March, sorry, early April through early May, was going up, but it was going up in these sharp moves. Bitcoin did not copy the sharp moves. What Bitcoin did is it started the rally ahead of it. It never actually skipped higher on these dates. It actually had these tremendous rallies here on April 14th, for example, which is quite close to this big rally highlighted by liquidity between the 16th and the 17th of April. So it does kind of mirror the moves, but because Bitcoin is not going to jump from 64K to 82K in a single day, which is what liquidity is showing, or in 2 days, which is what liquidity is showing, because Bitcoin cannot do that, what I've noticed is that it will begin the move ahead of time. So in this case, for instance, the rally that supposedly starts on July 22nd and ends on July 29th has likely already started because Bitcoin's not going to make these sharp moves. The yen is going to do that because somebody, or rather the Ministry of Finance at Japan, is dumping dollars to strengthen the yen. That's what's happening on these dates. That's why you see these 1 or 2 day really, really sharp moves that Bitcoin is just not going to copy. So Bitcoin price action will rhyme with whatever Japanese M2 is saying, but it's not going to copy it exactly if and when the yen is doing these sharp moves up and down. For instance, this is another perfect example. Notice this sharp sell-off. So after this stop on April 29, on April 21st, some of you might remember that. Hopefully you do, because we made a big deal about this stop in April. There's a sharp sell-off heading into May 1st. Of course, Bitcoin didn't do that because there's not enough time. So you need to apply some this is important for you to understand conceptually how this relationship works, because it's not like Bitcoin's going to go from 83K on April 21st, and by April 30th, it's going to be trading for 67 or 68. These sharp moves don't take place in Bitcoin anymore. What Bitcoin did is it sold off gently for just a few days. So it doesn't copy it exactly. What I would say is that 99% of the time, it seems, at least in 2026, Bitcoin follows Japanese M2. Whatever Japanese M2 is doing, 12 weeks later, Bitcoin's going to do that. unless you see these sharp moves. If you see these sharp moves, you can clearly see how Bitcoin does follow Japanese into up and down, but it doesn't copy the move. And what I've noticed is exactly what I'm saying here. When the yen stages these sharp moves, what I have noticed already in 2026 is that Bitcoin will start to move ahead of schedule, ahead of time. Why is it doing that? It's doing that so it doesn't actually have to move by like 10,000, 20, 25% in a single day. That's why it's doing so. It begins to price in this yen rally. It's already starting to be priced in.